When I arrived here this morning about 7:45, a whole 15 minutes before the 8 o'clock service, because I like to be early. As I'm driving down towards the parking lot, I see two vehicles, and I see a young family getting out of the vehicle. And I thought for a moment, oh, they picked a really weird place to park, to walk up. And then I saw the woman with the backpack and the camera. And my thoughts weren't, I should welcome them to church and invite them to come join us for the 8 o'clock service and to stay for coffee hour. My thoughts were not that at all. My thoughts were actually, who are they? They need to get out of here. And then I thought, well, they're on city property, so maybe they're not going to come to the church. And then as I'm walking to the church, I see them walking up holding props. And I just wanted to drive them out. And then the little Shelly that sometimes is on my shoulder, my senior warden, Shelby, and Jennifer, who's always on my shoulder, my wife, they both said, no, you need to welcome them. You need to welcome them to church. They're here. They belong here. This place is for everyone. I prayed, and it was just really hard to drive out that just pure annoyance and anger. And so we were getting ready, and they were taking pictures on the side of the chapel. And I asked Celeste if she would invite them to church, and she said, oh, I'll invite them to church. And I said, can you do it without being snarky? And she said, absolutely. And she invited them to church, and they said, no, thank you. And then I preached about them. I think they were gone when I started. And I realized that the reason I was so angry is church is incredibly precious to me. I absolutely love church. I love the people. I love the service. The building and the grounds are essentially totems or focal points for everything that happens inside. It reminds me of the baptisms and the funerals and the weddings. It reminds me of the times when I walk through those doors and I absolutely don't want to be here. There are Sundays where I just wanted to sleep in. But when I walk through the doors on the way out, I'm never sorry that I was here. I am always overjoyed that I came to church, that I received Christ, that I got to see everybody that was here. Church is never a bad thing. And so I thought, well, they don't appreciate any of that. They're just using it as a backdrop. And not only do they use it as a backdrop, but they charge a lot of money for a backdrop that is not theirs. But they belong here. They are welcome here. They should be invited to church. They were not disruptive. They were not loud. It's such a hard thing for me to view people who don't appreciate this place as children of God. But they are absolutely children of God. And they do belong here in the same way that all people who walk through these doors belong here. All people belong here. This place is for all people. Jesus is trying to find some peace. He just wants to be by himself with his disciples. They've been run ragged, and so they go to Tyre, which is not Jewish land. They go to Tyre so that they can get away from everybody, because Tyre is full of people who don't like Jewish people. And so Jesus is holed up, and he thinks, finally, we're going to get some rest. And there's a knock on the door, and wouldn't you know it, somebody heard about him. She's there for help. She's a Gentile, and she's not just any Gentile. She's a Syro-Phoenician woman. She's an Assyrian. The Assyrians and the Jews did not get along at all. The Assyrians murdered and killed, well, that's the same thing. They murdered the Jews, and they took them into slavery. And the one thing that I like to point out about the Assyrians is their hatred for the Jews was so fierce that when they sacked Jerusalem, and they attacked the wall around the city, the fire was so hot that it melted the stone. So there was no love lost between these two groups. Syro-Phoenician woman. Phoenicians were Canaanites. Canaanites and the Jews did not get along. Historically, they did not get along. So this woman represents people in the history of Judaism who have been against the Jews. And Jesus says to her, I didn't come to feed the dogs. And remember, this is not just a historical moment. This is high drama. And so the audience, when they hear Jesus say, I didn't come to feed the dogs, the audience is like, yeah, you tell her, Jesus. And they would have been like, ooh, right? They would have been, ooh, if it were a sitcom. One thing to remember is that dogs in the ancient world were not the precious creatures they are in our world, especially Southern California. I think that if you believe in reincarnation, the last step before nirvana is dog in Palos Verdes Estates, where people push you in a baby buggy, and they have people come to your house and wash your dog and trim your dog and clip its nails. If James's letter was written today, he would say, when a dog comes in, you say, who's a good boy? And you give the dog a bowl of water, and you invite the dog up to the altar, and you say, whose ears are so soft, so soft? And when a poor person walks in, you say, you stay back there. This is for the dog. Now, in the ancient world, dogs were just a few steps above rats and crows. People kicked dogs on a regular basis. They were not reported to the ASPCA. They ate garbage. And so Jesus calling her a dog is horrible. It is a brutal insult. And what does she say? Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that the children drop. This is a Syro-Phoenician woman, a Gentile, who is instructing Jesus about the kingdom. And Jesus says, go. Your faith has made your daughter well. The demon is gone. For those of us who have heard this for so long, it doesn't seem revolutionary, but it is beyond belief revolutionary that Jesus listened to a woman and then told the woman that her faith has made her well. Jesus took this outsider and said, your faith has made your daughter well. Jesus has said, you're right, the kingdom belongs to all people. It is for all people, not a select few. In the letter to James, James tells us that if we say to the person who is hungry, go and be well, and we don't feed the person, we've not done anything. That faith without works is dead. And it is one thing for me to preach this morning and talk about how we are called to love all people. But it is incredibly difficult to live this out during the week. At times, incredibly difficult to live this out on the way home from church. We are called to love all people. But again, I say that we are not called to do this by ourselves. We're never called to do this alone. We're called to do this as a community. And so when I asked Celeste if she could invite the people to church, she readily said yes. When we're having a terrible day, we should be able to call one another and say, I think people are awful and I want everyone to go away. And we should say, let's have a donut. Let's have some food and talk about why people are not awful. We're not called to do this alone. We're called to do this together. We're called to do this in community because this is the most difficult thing we will ever do, to love one another, to expand the circle, to welcome all people to the table. But it is who we are called to be. It is who we are made to be. Together we can do it. Together we will do it.